We are going to get a Dynasty Superflex mock draft based off landing spots in this CBS mock draft. But the more important thing I want to be looking at is updated Las Vegas betting odds of where the landing spots are going to be for these top prospects. Because right now, it looks very different than what we were looking at a month ago in terms of the probability of especially quarterbacks at the top of drafts. But I mean, starting off pick 1, I mean, it's been the same all year long. Everybody's already known Caleb Williams will be a Chicago Bear. I mean, I believe he was like minus 1,200 to be a Chicago Bear with the #1 overall pick early in the offseason. Now he's minus 4,000 to be a Chicago Bear. So yes, Caleb's going to go #1. Yes, he should go #1 in your Dynasty Superflex draft as well. The only instance that I think you can sit here and say, well, Mason, I instead want to go ahead, I want to take Marvin Harrison Jr., is if you're playing in a 10-team Superflex league where it's going to be much more difficult to go out there and trade away a quarterback, where in a 10-team league, everybody on average is going to have 3 to 4 starters rather than a 12-team where everybody's going to have 2 to 3. There, if you wanted to pass on Caleb and go Marvin at 1, I'm fine with it. We're going to go Marvin at 2 here. Marvin gets a phenomenal landing spot going over to the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, I know that there's been some conversation now with Malik Neighbors possibly going ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. And if you actually look at the most likely player to be selected here at 5 to the Chargers, right now Malik Neighbors is plus 225. You have Marvin plus 275. And keep in mind, the reason being is some people are pricing in Marvin as if he can still be the 4th overall pick, but there's no guarantee of that. We'll see in a second. JJ McCarthy's plus 300. In that instance, obviously, the Chargers would trade out. And then Joe Alt is plus 380. But nonetheless, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in this draft class. I think him and Neighbors are both elite level prospects. And if he were to find himself in Los Angeles, this is the best landing spot you could possibly ask for. Now, going over to our next guy, we are going to be looking at Drake May finding himself as a Washington Commander. Now, if you're looking at the updated betting odds, Jaden Daniels is most likely going to be the #2 overall pick. I mean, it's not guaranteed by any means. It's not a Caleb Williams type situation. Jaden Daniels is minus 120 to go to Washington. Drake May is plus 125. So honestly, if we're looking at this, plus the fact that you have the rushing upside for Jaden Daniels, if Daniels does go ahead of May in the NFL draft, which right now is looking like a possibility, in this mock draft it doesn't happen, but this is just one example, of course. I think that we would have to rank Jaden Daniels ahead of Drake May, primarily if you're considering the fact that Daniels has all the rushing upside in the world. If NFL talent evaluators are willing to sign off on the fact that he is the guy, I don't necessarily think that we should be arrogant enough to think that we know more than them. We should take the guy with the rushing upside that gets the NFL draft capital. So I'm going to head over to our rookie rankings on flogfantasy.com real quick. And I'm actually going to be moving Jaden Daniels ahead of Drake May. Let's get that updated. We're going to get that updated for both Superflex as well as one quarterback. This mock draft, it's not going to be the case because in this mock draft, you do have Daniels going behind Drake May to the New England Patriots at 3. Right now, May is actually the most likely pick at #3 if you're looking at Vegas sportsbooks. We're currently Drake May's minus 105. Jaden Daniels is plus 150. McCarthy is plus 380. So McCarthy is actually in play at #3. And obviously that means he's going ahead of someone in either May or Daniels. Now, we're going to go with Malik Neighbors, pick 6 here as our next option. With Malik Neighbors, I still want to stand by the fact that he is inside this tier, the top 5 guys. If you are looking at the landing spot for the Giants, obviously it'd be a nice situation in which you are penciled in to be the #1 target in this offense, the #1 weapon in this offense, and you're going to come away with a crazy target share. Now, the issue that you potentially have is, okay, well, maybe you dominate targets, but at the end of the day, you have very bad quarterback play. We don't know what that situation looks like in the long term. So there's downside in that it could continue to be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. By no means a guarantee, but it is a possibility. I love the prospect. I like the fact that he would get the opportunity, obviously being a top 10 NFL draft pick here as well. So we are going to have him at pick 5. But our next guy at 6... this is a continued trend here. I mean, we first talked about this possibility, I want to say about maybe a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I don't know exactly when it first started. I mean, being an idea, but it's picking up steam. A lot of people think that JJ McCarthy is going to be a Minnesota Viking. A lot of people think that they are going to trade up to number 4 to get him. If we are looking at Vegas sportsbooks currently, the most likely number 4 pick in this year's draft, Marvin Harrison Jr. minus 150. By no means is that a guarantee. Afterwards, you have JJ McCarthy plus 200, Drake May plus 800, Jaden Daniels plus 850. So essentially, at the number 4 pick, the two likely outcomes that are being priced in at the moment. One, the Arizona Cardinals stick and pick, and they just go ahead and they take Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, obviously, you can't really go wrong if you're the Cardinals with that selection. Should be very excited. The secondary option is the Minnesota Vikings, or maybe the New York Giants, or I don't know, maybe the Raiders, maybe the Broncos, trading up to the number 4 overall pick to take McCarthy. If you're looking at the most likely team to take McCarthy, according to Vegas Sportsbooks, the Vikings right now are minus 105. The Giants are plus 250. Washington's plus 275. New England's plus 380. Denver's plus 1,000. And then the Raiders are plus 2,500. So the Raiders probably aren't happening. But those top 5 teams are all in play to take McCarthy here, with the most likely being the Minnesota Vikings. If you are JJ McCarthy and you are a top 5 NFL draft pick and you go to a team that has Justin Jefferson, you go to a team that has Jordan Addison, you go to a team that has TJ Hawkinson, you have, the ability to maybe pick up 20 rushing yards per game at the NFL level. You have one of the best supporting casts that you're going to find. Plus, you have the job security indicated by the NFL draft cap. I think we have to go through. We have to give you respect. I have put JJ McCarthy at pick 7 in our flogfantasy.com prospect rankings. But if this landing spot does happen, there's no world in which I'm taking Rome ahead of him. If you're a top 5 draft pick and you're stepping into this situation, honestly, I wouldn't mind if you wanted to move him ahead of Malik Neighbors. As crazy as that sounds, I understand people are going to hate to hear it. I understand that some people think that they are expert talent evaluators with these quarterbacks coming out of school. Like I've said a million times, I am not. I look at a combination of team investment, aka team draft capital, because that's going to indicate the job security that quarterback has. Look at their rushing upside and look at their situation they're stepping into. And McCarthy would check 2 of those boxes in a big time way. So I moved McCarthy ahead of Brock Bowers in our flogfantasy.com prospect rankings. And we will continue to make sure we monitor the likelihood of him going to pick 4. And of course, if you ever want to stay up to date with all our prospect rankings on flogfantasy.com, not only are all mine over there, but also pretty much everybody you watch on YouTube. We have 3 in-depth Dynasty rookie draft guides as well, all like within, I want to say, 50 plus pages. I don't know, hundreds of pages of Dynasty rookie draft guides, all the premium content from all your favorite creators, all in one place on flogfantasy.com. Use code FLOCK. You'll get 30% off any sub. Plus, yours truly will break down your Dynasty team in a podcast. But let's move over to our next player, and that is going to be Rome Odunze. Here he finds himself as a Chicago Bear with pick 9. Now, this would be a very bad landing spot. You already have DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore would be the wide receiver 1 there, especially in the short term. You have Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen at this point of his career is not necessarily someone I'm expecting to come out and dominate from a fantasy perspective. I think that Keenan Allen is a wide receiver that's going to have a smaller role in Chicago. That's, going into year 10 of his NFL career, you can't really expect this guy to continue to dominate, right? But nonetheless, the type of wide receiver that Keenan Allen is, this isn't necessarily an option that's going to go out there and stretch NFL defenses, take safety attention away so DJ Moore and Rome can go out there and be more effective and be more efficient. Nope, that's not what's going to happen. Instead, what would happen here is if you were looking at Keenan Allen, when he's on the field, he's probably drawing targets out of a clip. He's the guy running close to the line of scrimmage. He's the guy that's moving the chains. So typically, a player like Keenan Allen is better from a fantasy football perspective than a real life perspective. And he was going to be damn good at taking targets away from DJ Moore and Rome in the short term. Long term, maybe you say, well, Mason Rome can be the wide receiver 1B or maybe the wide receiver 1A to DJ Moore in what should be a very good Chicago Bears offense with Caleb Williams. I think the Bears are going to have a great offense this next season. I think this Bears team is so much better than a team you typically expect with the number 1 overall pick. So it's interesting, but I still probably wouldn't like the landing spot. Love Rome as a prospect, of course, but I do think you have to have him behind McCarthy relatively easily. Now, our next guy will be Brock Bowers. Bowers goes to the Jets at pick 10. Obviously, Bowers, extremely young tight end prospect. I've been started producing right away at 18 years old at Georgia. I mean, this is a player that people are extremely excited about. What's interesting to see, here he goes to the Jets, and his most likely team, according to Vegas Sportsbooks right now, will be the New York Jets. The Jets are at plus 125. Then you have the Colts plus 300, the Bengals plus 900, the Bears plus 1,000, the Chargers plus 1,000, Denver plus 1,000, and the Titans plus 1,200. I mean, if you're looking at the Jets as a landing spot, I think it makes a lot of sense. And then obviously the Jets have two pretty big needs. One, they need some secondary weapons, as someone not named Garrett Wilson that Rodgers is going to be able to get the ball to. And two, they need some help with the offensive line. Hopefully, Brock Bowers would give you a little bit of both, right? He's not going to be Rome in terms of, yes, just completely transforming what you can do from a weapon perspective deep downfield. But he's not going to be Joe Alt on the offensive line. Hopefully, he's a little bit of a hybrid of both for the Jets here if they were to take him. I think it'd be a good landing spot. Now, going over to our next guy, Adonai Mitchell. If you look at our rankings on the site, we have moved him up to wide receiver 5. He destroys the NFL Combine. He essentially locks himself into being a round 1 NFL draft pick. I am still very hesitant to buy and go all in on Adonai based off how bad the production profile was at Texas. It's not like he was just average with his yards per route run. It's not like he was average with his yards per team pass attempt. It's not like he was average with his targets per route runs. Whether you're looking at Georgia or whether you're looking at Texas. The production profile is pretty much the worst in the class. I mean, it is laughably bad. But with that being said, film guys absolutely love him. He's an effective deep threat. Here he goes to the Buffalo Bills, pick 28. Pretty much being a better version of maybe what you have in, say, like Gabe Davis. Obviously, it's the best situation you could possibly ask for, even though in my mind, he has some pretty big red flags. He has some pretty green flags, if you want to call them that. And this would be a perfect landing spot with some serious draft capital. Now, our next guy will be Brian Thomas Jr. I would rather a Brian Thomas Jr. in a vacuum over Adonai. Here, he also finds himself in a phenomenal landing spot. He finds himself in the Arizona Cardinals, pick 27. So these guys are going pretty much back to back. But still, I think that you're in an interesting situation in which we don't want to go through and we don't want to say that Kyler is going to be able to provide the same kind of passing volume as what you'd have with Josh Allen. So just based off situation and situation alone, I do think maybe it's enough to put Adonai ahead of Brian Thomas Jr., even though Thomas was more productive and had more competition in his own offense, right? Where he was dealing with Malik Neighbors. Now, what is interesting is if you are looking at Vegas Sportsbooks, right now the line is 6.5 for wide receivers to be selected in round 1. You're minus 190 for the under, and you are plus 150 for the over. So, I mean, pretty much it's priced in as if we should see about 6 wide receivers in round 1. I mean, if you count this out, obviously, we know Marvin, we know Neighbors, we know Rome. Those guys are going to be for sure going round 1. I think Adonai, Brian Thomas look to be locked in. Xavier Worthy is someone that I think will go round 1 in the NFL draft. In this mock draft, he doesn't. I have no idea how, but we'll talk about him in just one second. But I think those should be about the 6 players we're looking at round 1 draft picks at wide receiver. Of course, lots going to change. We're just looking at these lines and how they stand currently. Now, our next pick is going to be Michael Penix Jr. He actually goes to the Denver Broncos, pick 19 here. Right now, you are minus 230 for over 4.5 quarterbacks to be selected in round 1. Now, I don't necessarily know if that 5th guy is going to be Penix. I don't know if that 5th guy is going to be Bo Nix. But regardless, I mean, if Penix were to see this kind of draft capital where he goes to a team also that doesn't have a quarterback at all, He probably starts year one. He's going to be on a short leash. This isn't a Mitchell Trubisky, Blake Bortles situation where if he is horrible, he's going to be able to hold on to a job for 3 to 4 years. No, they would be willing to move on from him a little bit quicker. But if he's great, then cool. I mean, ultimately, he can win the starting job for the long term. If you're looking at the team that's most likely to select him, you have the Vikings plus 250, the Raiders plus 320, the Seahawks plus 400, the Broncos plus 500, the Pats plus 700, and then the Giants plus 1100. Now, going over to the next pick, this is my biggest gripe in this mock draft, to be honest with you. Xavier Worthy doesn't go off the board till pick 49. That's a great landing spot. Finds himself in Cincinnati. Obviously, you'll love being paired up alongside an elite level quarterback. I think it make a lot of sense whether they decide to keep T. Higgins or not for the long term, but you bring in that vertical element, you bring in the speedster, someone that hopefully can take defensive attention away, create some space underneath for maybe the running game, and obviously the target hogs in this offense at wide receiver. Xavier Worthy, he was productive as a true freshman. Of course, hook 'em horns. The issue is the production profile actually got worse as his career went on. You can maybe excuse this away with his final year, him having to deal with Adonai. Obviously, if you look at like the fastest wide receivers at the NFL Combine, these guys really never produce at the NFL level, but the majority of the time, those guys didn't produce in college either, right? So here it's a little bit of a different situation with Worthy in that we've seen the production before, and he does have some positive traits on his production profile. I think he ends up going round one. I doubt he makes it this far just based off that 40-yard dash. Like I said, we actually moved him up in the prospect rankings 1 or 2 slots based off the 40. Not because what it means from him as a probability of hitting at the NFL level based off 40 time alone, but more so because I think his 40-yard dash time, I don't want to say guarantees him, but looks pretty damn close to put him in round one. But he's right now plus 500 to go to the Chiefs, plus 550 to go to the Bills, plus 700 to go to the Panthers, plus 900 to go to the Pats, plus 900 to go to the Cardinals, plus 1,000 to go to Dallas. So you see that he is penciled in to be a late round one NFL draft pick or very, very early round two. Now, the guys that go very early round two, a wide receiver instead here, are Ladd and Keon. I'm going to go Ladd over Keon 1. I think that he's a slightly more intriguing prospect. Keon, I mean, didn't have the production profile in school and didn't really have the excuse, at least with Ladd. You can say, okay, the sample size was so small. I mean, maybe if he played the entire season, if he wasn't hurt, then he could have been productive. Keon Coleman doesn't really have that same level of excuse, right? And also, Keon going to Carolina, we've already seen that most likely Bryce Young is a bad quarterback. Ladd going to New England, maybe Jaden Daniels is a great NFL QB. We don't know, but I'd be more willing to bet on Jaden Daniels at this point than I would be Bryce Young. Now, going over to our next two picks, we're going to be going with some running backs here. We're going to go back-to-back Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson. Both running backs go round 3 of the NFL draft, which obviously you don't love that draft capital. But Jonathan Brooks finds himself in the better situation. He's going to the Dallas Cowboys, just a better offense overall. Trey Benson finds himself as a Giant. I mean, obviously, it's not a bad landing spot in that you should have the guaranteed opportunity there. I mean, you should ultimately be able to see touches year one and hopefully going into the future. But I don't know. I think Jonathan Brooks, if he was fully healthy, would probably be a little bit of a better prospect. If you are looking at what NFL sportsbooks are saying at the moment, they have Jonathan Brooks plus 225, Trey Benson plus 275, Jalen Wright plus 350, Blake Corum plus 425, Marshawn Lloyd plus 600 to be the first running back selected in the draft. Now, going over to our next spot, we will have Bo Nix going over to the Raiders. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Raiders to take a quarterback in round 2, right? I mean, you have Minshew where, I mean, if whatever quarterback you take in round 2 ends up being buns, which typically second round quarterbacks are, then you're not having to go through, you're not having to look at that guy immediately. You can roll out Gardner Minshew, just get through the season. But, I mean, hell, if he ends up turning out to be great, cool. I mean, we spent a minimal pick on him. Would be more so like a Will Levis situation, right? Where if he comes in, he impresses, maybe gets another year if he flashes, but he's going to be on that short leash where any quarterback that goes round 2 of the NFL draft, the second that they look like they don't have it, they are going to get replaced almost immediately. It's very different than like McCarthy going inside the top 5 picks. Now, going over to our next guy, we're going to have Troy Franklin. I mean, going into the NFL Combine, I had Troy Franklin ranked ahead of Xavier. I had him ranked ahead of Adonai. I had him right up there with Brian Thomas Jr. The production profile looks great. This is someone that breaks out as a true freshman, dominates as a true sophomore, declares as a true junior, is at the very top of the class, yards per route run, very top of the class, yards per team pass attempt, very top of the class in terms of his targets per route run. So, I mean, the production profile looks great for Franklin. Doesn't really look like he's going to see the same level of NFL draft capital as these other guys. He has size concerns. This would be a very bad landing spot as well, going over to Philadelphia, where it's a good offense, but you have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith there for the long term, plus Saquon Barkley, plus Jalen Hurts running the ball. So, I mean, if we go A.J. Brown, Smith, Barkley, Hurts running, Troy Franklin would be like the fifth option in this offense. I like the player a lot, but, I mean, obviously wouldn't be a good situation. Now, going over to our next guy, not as good of a prospect, not as good of NFL draft capital. Tez Walker goes to the Kansas City Chiefs here, pick 95. So obviously almost being a day 3 pick, you don't love the probability. But, I mean, still, Rashee Rice, a little more of a gadgety type wide receiver, at least how he was used last year. It's not like he ran the full route tree. Travis Kelce is still incredibly old, so very similar to how we took Rashee Rice in a ton of rookie drafts last year, just based off the fact that, oh, okay, he goes day 2 to the Kansas City Chiefs. It's an open depth chart. Even if I don't love the guy, you kind of have to bet on Mahomes here. It would be the same thing with Tez Walker. We'd be taking him over. Malachi Corley goes to the Cleveland Browns at 54. Corley actually has a better production profile. A big issue that you may have with this, however, is the fact that this is a wide receiver that sees a ton of his target volume close to the line of scrimmage. I mean, not necessarily someone operating deep downfield. So more, I don't want to say manufacturer touches, but he's not running the full route tree either, right? You're going over to Cleveland where we have uncertain quarterback play, but still, I mean, it's decent draft capital, and he was productive in school, and he drew targets at a very high clip. Now, our next guy will be Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk, very difficult to evaluate his production just because he played alongside Jalen McMillan, who's going to be another top 100 pick here. He played alongside Rome, who obviously is a top 10 NFL draft pick. He goes to the Indianapolis Colts 46, so better draft capital than some of the other guys that we took ahead of him. The issue that you may have with the Colts in my mind, one, I think Michael Pittman Jr. is still going to be the number 1 guy here. 2, it's going to be an offense that the passing volume is probably not great. I think Anthony Richardson can still be a phenomenal fantasy football option based off his rushing upside, but based off Richardson running the football, based off them probably wanting to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor as well, I am expecting this to be a situation where it's a run-first offense. Jalen Polk is someone that's going to be difficult to evaluate based off what we saw in school, and at the same time, I mean, it's a situation where he's kind of the wide receiver 2 at best. Now, Jatavion Sanders will be our next guy. Jatavion going to the Washington Commanders 78. I mean, you have new quarterback play coming in. Hopefully the passing offense would be there. Obviously, some solid wide receivers where they can take targets away. But still, I mean, it's a situation where tight end's going to be a massive need. Hook'em Lawrence, this is someone that was able to be productive alongside Xavier Worthy, someone that was able to be productive alongside Adonai, someone that was able to be productive alongside Brooks. So, I mean, he was an impressive prospect in my mind. It's a decent landing spot. Obviously, the capital's not great, but we'll take him here. Xavier Legette will be our next guy, 51. Now, obviously, the Steelers just hit on wide receiver year after year after year after year. Typically, you want to listen to what the Steelers are doing when they are drafting these guys. But, I mean, even though it's decent draft capital, I am uncertain of the situation. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers did the absolute best that they could and made very smart moves at quarterback, bringing in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson at pretty much no cost whatsoever. But with that being said, both quarterbacks are trending in the wrong direction. Neither one of them looks like they're going to be great when it comes to passing volume this next season. Pickens looks like he should probably be the number 1 guy. And Xavier Legette is a wide receiver that took 5 years to break out. I mean, typically those guys aren't players you want to be betting on. Ricky Purcell going to be our next guy with the Jags at 48. I actually don't mind the landing spot whatsoever. I don't love the prospect profile, but I mean, if you are looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think Gabe Davis is kind of like the perfect wide receiver that you want to be playing across from. And that Gabe Davis field stretching option, speedster, take the safety attention away, while at the same time, he's not going to be drawing a ton of targets in his own right. Jalen McMillan will be our next guy, going to go to the New England Patriots at 68. Obviously, this is a Patriots team that just took Ladd earlier on. They have a question mark when it comes to their quarterback position, where they'd be going through and taking a rookie here. So I don't want to act like it's an absolute no-brainer. This is also someone that is going to be difficult to evaluate, similar to what we said with Polk, because when you play alongside Rome and Polk, obviously it's hard to come away with too much production. Roman Wilson will be our next guy, 72. Goes to the Jets. I think it make a lot of sense from a Jets perspective. A day 2 draft pick, I think it's fine. Braylon Allen going to the Indianapolis Colts at 82. Interesting in that obviously JT just got his contract extension. You do miss out on Zach Moss, so this would be pretty much just a depth play at running back. Pretty expensive here to take him in round 3, though, if you are just going pure depth. But we see teams do this time and time again. Like we saw the Jacksonville Jaguars go out there and take Tank Bigsby round 3 last year. Now we're going to go Jermaine Berton, Houston, 86. Wide receiver to Alabama, and we'll go Javon Baker here, going to the Arizona Cardinals at 90. But, I mean, as you can tell in this mock draft, you just had a zillion wide receivers going on day 2. I wonder if we are maybe overestimating the depth of this wide receiver class. I know everybody in the comment section is going to be screaming, Mason, no, it's a deep class. There's so many great guys. And I always just get a little hesitant when everybody thinks the same exact thing. Are we sure we are going to have this many wide receivers going in rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft? I mean, definitely a possibility, right? But I mean, I think maybe we get a few of these guys like Baker, like Berton, and maybe like McMillan, and maybe some of these guys that we think are going to go day 2 end up going day 3 of the draft. But I think that's all I got for you. Really appreciate you. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like, subscribe if you play Dynasty. And of course, if you want to check out all my rookie rankings, check out all the rookie rankings for all your favorite creators, plus all the premium content, including Dynasty rookie draft guides, Dynasty trade calculator, the whole 9 yards. FlockFantasy.com, code FLOCK is going to get you 30% off any sub. Plus, yours truly will break down your Dynasty team in a podcast. But that's all I got for you. Appreciate you. Hope you have a great day, and hope we get to see you out with a video tomorrow.